All right, guys, happy Wednesday. We got a lot to do today. We want to hit our fourth objective today in our small book. It's on page 201. You have to have your foldable out, of course. This is the third or fourth time we've done the foldable. They got to all be filled in, inside and out. Name on the back for full credit. Turned in with your packet. I would put it in my Wednesday packet. I started it on Tuesday, finished it on Wednesday. I may use it for my test on Friday. Synonyms and antonyms. We've also had this one before. We can abbreviate it today. Synonyms and antonyms. This is our vocabulary strategy. Each week we work on building our vocabulary. And one of the ways to build your vocabulary is to be able to figure out new words. As you read Judy's Appalachia, you may come across an unfamiliar word, a new word. Sometimes the author may use a synonym or antonym that will help you figure out the meanings of the word. I bet they're going to tell us what the definition of synonym and antonym is next. Synonyms are words that have similar meanings. I like to say synonyms are the same. Antonyms are words with opposite meanings. Antonyms are opposites. Can't wait till you guys get Mrs. Bauer. She'll have some kind of crazy jingle with that. All right, so you got synonyms, and I'm going to put down the same. You got antonyms are opposites. And then I'm just going to put a little star here. They help me figure out the meanings of unfamiliar words. So if I don't know the words, I'm going to look for words around it, context clues. And those context clues may be the synonym, might be the same, or it might be the opposite. Our assignment today is page 127. Should be in your Wednesday packet. I'm going to start with my name on top. Read each sentence below. Underline, it's our classic Wednesday assignment, underline the word in the second sentence that is a synonym or an antonym of the word in bold. Then write the best definition of the word you underlined on the line. Craig was free. The thought of being captive shocked him. Captive, free, opposites. Free, not being captive. Because it was an antonym, I had to put not there. Now we all know what free is. Free is you're not in prison. Free is you're not captive. Free is... Boy, isn't that amazing how many of our definitions come with the opposite? Hooked right onto it. Number 2, he had been working constant 12-hour days since age 4. Non-stop working kept Ichabod from going to school. Constant. Non-stop. What does constant mean? That means always going. Non-stop. Always on the go. Could you imagine that? This is a story that we didn't get to read because we can't give you everything when you're not in school. But Ichabod is a story about this young boy who could never go to school and had to work at a young age. That was an injustice, one of the words that we're studying this week, and people fought to free these kids that were put into these work camps. Yeah, isn't that amazing? And we complain about doing a little homework. This poor kid worked 12 hours non-stop since he was 4 years old. All right, well, 3, 4, and 5 are yours. Remember to do some underline and then definition. When you're finished with that one, you can tuck that one into your folder for the week. Now, the main event, the event we've been working for, waiting patiently for the main biography of this week, and its title is Delivering Justice. The genre is biography. It's a little play on word because you see our main character here is actually delivering the mail. And our main character here is W.W. Law and the fight for the Civil War. This young man here is going to deliver mail by day and deliver justice by night. Savannah, Georgia. The smell of Grandma's biscuits lured Wesley to the kitchen. Wesley was excited because today was Thursday, the day he would see his mother. The rest of the week she worked for a white family just outside of Savannah, cooking and cleaning and taking care of their children. This was her day off. So this is young Wesley right here. And this is Grandma and Grandpa who are going to raise her. Grandma's friend, I'm sorry, I forgot, it was not her husband. Grandma's friend, old John, was sitting at the table. Wesley loved listening to the old man's stories. Old John had been born a slave. He had been taken from his mother and had never even known her. He was 9, Wesley's age, when he and all the slaves were freed in 1865. Wesley felt lucky. At least he saw his own mama once a week. Easter shopping at Levy's. Once a year, sometime before Easter, Grandma would take Wesley downtown to Levy's department store. Think about this being like Kohl's department store, where there's all sorts of everything you could want there. They got toys there, they got shoes there, they got clothes there, they got jewelry there, all sorts of things at this department store. The department store on Bronton Street to buy one nice outfit. They used a Levy's charge card and then paid a little bit off each month. My wife has a Kohl's card. I don't know if your parents shop at Kohl's at all, but maybe they have a Kohl's card or a Macy's card. So this is just like our Kohl's. On one shopping trip, the saleswoman would not serve them until all the white customers had been helped. Wesley had heard the saleswoman politely call the white woman customers Mrs. and Miss, but she treated his grandmother if she was a child and nobody. Wesley's grandmother pretended not to notice. She was polite, but she was also proud. "Come on," she said. "It's time to go home." They left the store without buying a thing. That's one way to make a difference, not buying a thing. We're going to hear what that's called coming up. You see in this picture here, back shortly after the time of the Civil War, we had what was called segregation. We're going to learn about in the next section. But we had 2 drinking fountains. One where people who were African American could drink, and one where people who were Caucasian could drink. Segregation. Back then, black people weren't treated as well as white people. Most of the time, they were kept segregated from whites. Wesley went to a separate school for black children. He had to drink from water fountains marked colored. He could not sit and eat at the Levy's lunch counter. So we're going back to this lunch table at this department store. They had food in it, kind of like you'd get if you'd go down to IKEA. I haven't been to this new IKEA, but my family went there this year once, and they have a food court right in the middle of it. Separate. Segregation needs to be separate. His grandmother's prayer. Sometimes Wesley got angry that black people were mistreated, and that no matter how hard his mother worked, they were still poor. But his grandmother was always there to talk with him. She understood why he was upset, but she didn't want him to have bad feelings about himself. So she said that no matter how he was treated, he had no excuse not to be somebody. She told him again about the day he was born. She said, "I got on my knees and I prayed that you would grow up to be a leader of our people." Wesley promised himself that he would fulfill his grandma's prayer. He also promised himself that he would work hard so that one day his mother would not have to work in somebody else's house. That's kind of crazy. The grandma's teaching us a good lesson here. She's teaching him, you want to be something? Work hard. You know, one of the things that we don't do enough of being virtual is setting good goals. If we were at school every Monday, we'd talk about the goals for the week. And what's your goal for the day? And what's your goal for the quarter? What kind of grades do you want to get? What kind of goals do you have? And while this kid's got a pretty big goal and he's pretty young, he wants to work so hard that one day his mom won't have to work in somebody else's house. What's one ticket to success? Hard work, hard work. You guys have a great opportunity right now with virtual learning to work hard to get your education, to be like Wesley's grandmother would like him to be somebody someday. Great advice, Grandma. Okay, Voter School, 1942. Did you catch it? The dates here? We're having dates on some of these. 1932. This is 10 years later, 1942. Wesley knew that many black people didn't vote because they had to pass a test to register. The test was designed to be difficult for black folks to pass. It was intended to keep them from voting. Now, this was true. This was over, well, not 100 years. About 80 years ago. This is no longer true nowadays. You do not have to take a voter's test to register to vote. Wesley was a member of the Youth Council of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The Youth Council started a special voter school in the basement of a church. With his friend Clifford, Wesley talked to everyone, even passers-by, about voting. When he found someone who, scared by the test, had never registered to vote, he took them to the voter school. When they felt they were ready to take tests, Wesley went with them to the courthouse and stayed until they were registered. With Wesley's help, boy, this kid's making a difference. With Wesley's help and encouragement, many black people in Savannah became registered voters. It just reminded me of our essential question: can one person make a difference? Obviously, the answer is yes. Wesley's making a huge difference. Working as a mailman, 1949, just 8 years later. After college and the Army, Wesley wanted to be a teacher. But because of his membership in the NAACP, no one in Savannah would hire him. So Wesley became a mailman. The Postal Service hired qualified people, regardless of their color. As it turned out, this job suited Wesley just fine. Good morning, Miss Sally Lawrence Jenkins, Wesley sang out to a young woman in her garden. Here's a letter from your sister. Wesley liked to address the people by their full names. He could trace a person's history in their name, and history was important to Wesley. If you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going? He loved to ask. The NAACP office, February 1960. 11 years later, you can see Wesley's now much older. After work, Wesley spent long evenings at the NAACP office. One night, he was visited by a group of students who were excited about what was happening in Greensboro, North Dakota. Young black people who had staged a sit-in at a lunch counter in a local store. Now, if you don't know what a sit-in is, here comes the definition. They had refused to leave until they were served. Now, a sit-in is if you would go to a restaurant and you would want to be served, and they're like, we don't serve your kind here, or we're only open for certain races. And then you'd go sit there and like, well, we're not going to serve you. And you didn't care because if you sat there, nobody else could. And if nobody else could, the business wouldn't make money. And so these students are sitting at this lunch counter, and the lunch counter's not making any money. The students standing in front of Wesley wanted to do the same thing at the department store on Broughton Street, but they needed a leader. Wesley remembered how his grandmother had been treated at levees, and he agreed to help. But first, the students had to be trained. They had to protest without ever using violence. Isn't this interesting? Never using violence. Do you know who was teaching this about this same time in history? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so we give so much credit to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and boy, did he deserve it. But there is a lot of other people out there, like this Wesley, who are teaching these same things, these Bible truths. Stand up for what's right, even if the other side did not. If they were attacked and they fought back, Wesley told them their cause would be lost. Sit-in strategies. Dress neatly. Boy, that's kind of cool. You know, a lot of these things we have in businesses or in schools, or if you go out to any kind of fancy restaurant, dress neatly, enter together, sit together, order politely, Do not react to insults and leave together. Great advice for these sit-ins. Levy's Lunch Counter. After weeks of training, small groups of students made their way downtown, entering the big store along Broughton Street, and sat down at the lunch counter. The store refused to serve them. At Levy's, the manager called the police, who arrested the students for breaking the city's segregation law. These people are really calm. They're doing exactly what they want to do. Great job. Nobody else is getting served. But they got arrested. What? Well, let's find out what happens next. Throwing down their cards. Wesley called a mass meeting the next Sunday at Bolton Street Baptist Church. People filled the pews and the balcony. Wesley opened the meeting with a hymn. All the voices singing together made a thunderous sound, and the mighty noise made people think that perhaps working together they could really make something happen. Wesley spoke about the arrest of the young people at Levy's. He said that the things had to change, and he asked the people if they are ready to fight for their rights. Someone shouted, "I'll never shop at that store again." Then someone in the balcony threw down Levy's charge card. Soon everyone was tossing charge cards into a big pile in the church. In other words, we're not going to buy things there. That will teach them. Why did we throw those things down? Well, we want to reread to check your understanding. And we're rereading them, throwing their cards down, is because the kids got arrested and they shouldn't have been. Check out this. These are like boxes and bushes of charge cards. The boycott begins. I told you we were going to hear about it. The next morning, Wesley led a group downtown. They carried baskets full of charge cards. At Leslie, Wesley and his group dumped the baskets of charge cards onto the sidewalk. Then Wesley announced that no African American people would shop at any store on Broughton Street until they were treated equally. The great Savannah boycott had begun. Picket lines. All right, here's a picture of it first. These are people holding up signs trying to convince other people to join in this battle. Picket lines. Wesley and the other members of the NAACP organized a picket line every day in front of Levy's. White people yelled and jeered at the protesters and tried to force them off the sidewalk. But day after day, the protesters returned. One day, a large, burly white man punched one of the demonstrators in the face and broke his jaw. But everyone remembered what Wesley had taught them. They didn't yell or fight back, no matter how much they wanted to. This guy's got tons of self-control, because that would be pretty hard to turn the other cheek. I wonder where Wesley got his teachings from. Wesley organized other protesters. There were kneel-ins in white churches on Sundays and wade-ins in all-white beaches at Tybee. Wesley wanted to end segregation everywhere in Savannah, in libraries, in theaters, in public pools, in beaches, and in restrooms, as well as the lunch counters. Talking about peaceful change. Large meetings were held every Sunday at different churches. Protesters talked about their activities. Some gave fiery speeches. The meetings became so popular that no church was big enough to hold everyone who wanted to get in. For a year and a half, no one from the black community shopped at Broughton Street. Wesley walked down the street and started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going out of business signs. Guys, it's working. You can't have a business and not have customers. And because the African American people refuse to buy things there, the companies are going out of business, which is bad business for them. It's sad for them, but come on, start treating people equally. The white store owners couldn't stay in business without black customers. When he delivered the mail to white people, Wesley told them how much he loved Savannah. He wanted the city to be a better place for everyone. They respected Wesley. They saw how peaceful and committed to change the protesters were. Little by little, more and more white people began to sympathize with the protesters. Sympathize means to know how they feel. Desegregation without violence. White people in the community who supported Wesley asked what they could do to end segregation and stop the boycott. Together, leaders from the white and the black communities worked out a plan. Each evening after delivering the mail, Wesley organized a group of students to sit in different kinds of businesses and facilities the next day. The theaters would be first, then the restaurants, then the libraries, and on down the line until every business had been desegregated. Sometimes angry crowds would gather, or white people would leave in protest when the black students arrived. But most of the white and black leaders stuck together. The mayor made sure that all the signs marking separate facilities for blacks and whites at City Hall, the courthouse, health department, and the hospital were taken down. Good for you, Mayor. City officials took the segregation laws off the books. Unlike desegregation efforts in other cities and towns in the South, there was very little violence in Savannah. Great job, Wesley. Delivering justice. Sorry, I read it backwards. Justice delivered. On a Sunday in September 1961, Wesley greeted the hundreds of people who arrived at a downtown Savannah church. Inside, their voices joined together to sing out, "We are soldiers in God's army." When the song ended, Wesley stood in front of the crowd. He saw his mother sitting in the front row. He saw students who had been arrested. He saw faces beam with pride. Then he announced in a loud, clear voice, "We have triumphed." Savannah was the first southern city in the United States to declare that all the citizens equal. 3 years before, the Federal Civil Rights Act made all segregations illegal. People, both black and white, saw Wesley as Savannah's hero. There we got it. Everyday hero. He had kept the protest disciplined and peaceful, even in the face of violence. Modestly, he would say, "I was just doing what every black American should be doing." Wesley Wallace Law. Now, it took us all the way to the end to figure out the title, W.W. Law. That's his name. Wesley Wallace Law delivered more than just the mail to the citizens of Savannah. He delivered justice too. His grandmother's prayers had been answered. Those of you want to make you stand up and cheer. Here we have a young boy, young man, middle-aged man become this great leader. And how did he do it? He based all of his teachings on God's word. We have evidence, text evidence of that right here. We saying out, "We are all soldiers in God's army." He followed God's law. He said, "Turn the other cheek." He said, "Peacefully we can do this." And what a difference he made. The first desegregated city. 3 years before the law was even passed, he had it happening in his town. What a hero he is. All right, guys. In the middle of the video, you had your assignment, and now we got to the end of the story. We'll talk more about it on Thursday. God bless the rest of your day.